Do you think you're prepared for your tournaments? You've got a drop map, you've decided you're going to play Storm, you know you can get Surge from these specific hills, you've told your teammate you're going to play dead side on every zone to stay away from the congestion. However, that's not a game plan. You've got to do more. This video is going to show you how to actually prepare for a tournament, how to have a game plan that's going to get you through all elo, make endgames consistently, and get you your best placements. Let's go. Starting with Offspawn preparation, you will need a drop map. This is a map that shows you a bunch of points, where if you pull your glider there, you'll have a perfect glide into your drop. The easiest way to do that is to get a Syrian Pro, where they have an unlimited drop map generator. It does cost money, but you can get a 12.5% discount by using code FROSTBITE at checkout. I'm going to show you how to use a drop map you generate with an example here. So I know that my drop map aims for here, and I know that I don't want to stay in the bus longer than I need to, because up to a point it's going to be quicker to just jump out the bus and just start diving towards the spot. And normally it's about a 60-degree angle, but here, because the bus is a bit closer, I think the marker's going to line up somewhere with this line here. So I'm going to quickly flick to my drop map. I see there's a marker in the river, and I'm going to place it in the river. Let's try and be a bit exact. It's about there. And now I'm going to jump. Probably should have jumped a bit earlier, but just because of demonstration. And then you normally want to have like your character's feet in line with the marker, if the marker's close. If the marker's further away, you want to keep it just outside of the screen. Dive onto the marker. And now I've got a heater for this random patch of grass. And there you go. That's the quickest way to drop. Having good loot routes is another key part of your off-spawn preparation, and this is about how you get the loot and mats in your drop spot. You want to get them both at the same time so you're ready to get fought. And in this Malibuka gameplay in the background, you can see he gets the loot from the hut and then immediately goes outside to farm the rocks and the trees. And now when he goes up on this hill and he gets fought, he's ready to win the fight. You can apply this in solos and duos, and you want to maximize what you get in the shortest amount of time, whilst also making sure you have field, mats and loot. You also really need to prepare on how to fight off spawn. So here I've got an example POI in the middle of the map, and I've opened the chest on Fortnite GG. Let me open select barrels as well, and anything else that will be useful for an off spawn fight. And immediately I can see a few clear things. So here there's obviously barrels outside, but they're going to be inconvenient to get in an off spawn fight. But I think the two key areas that you want to play for in this off spawn is going to be this side and this side. Now, obviously in an actual game, there's going to be vertical layers and there's going to be certain doors and certain chests that are easier to get. So you also want to look in replays to see how this all works. Now, the easiest way to do this is you want to open a replay, go to the very start. So make sure the players haven't loaded in the bus. You want to go to drone, direct movement, max out your linear speed. Make sure you're in drone 3 as well. And then press plus on your keyboard and go flying over to the island. And when you come over here, you'll actually find out that all of the chests are still rendered in. And obviously, some of these might not have spawned in the game that you're looking at. However, these do show all of the chest spawns. So now you can actually understand where the doors are in each POI, how you can access the chests. Let me see if I can find a good example. So here I can see that there's the big entrances here, and I know there's a chest here, and there's a chest above. So this chest might show on Fortnite GG, but to be honest, this isn't going to be super useful in an off-spawn fight, so you can kind of ignore it. This is the main chest you want to look for in this building. And maybe in this other building, you might find, okay, these chests are closer together, so let's maybe go for this instead. Once you know the most dense spots in the POI where there's loot, so maybe there's some here, and maybe there's a row of chests here, and there's barrels, and so there's some mats here. Once you know where the best places are to start an off-spawn fight, this is what you want to play for. So maybe the bus is coming from this side, you might land here. Immediately, you can just run here because you know that this is better to play for, and you want to cut your opponents, who might also land here, you want to cut them off from getting this good loot. So you want to leave them with scraps, and you can rack up your advantages using the best part of the POI. A lot of teams won't take this time to do the prep in each drop spot, and they'll just sit back and just land in and just hope they see a chest. But if you know where the chests are and the barrels are and all of these stuff are in advance, you can understand, okay, we can play from this, and this has good angles, and then we have these mats, so we can use height. Eventually, with practice, you will understand all the advantages and how to actually perfect your off-spawn fighting. Preparing your mid-game is all about how to be stacked when it comes to the end game. So immediately you want to think about how can you get shield, mats and loot. Obviously, if you're uncontested at a POI, you're going to have your loot route where you're gonna maybe one guy in the duo lands here, does this, farms that, whatever, and then he gets out safely, and same with the other person. However, you've also got to think about, what if you're contested, what if you're scuffed? You need to have an idea about the scrap loot around you and how to recover a game. So immediately I can see this as a somewhat uncontested area. Like, that's not really a good drop for a duo, but if you're scuffed and maybe your original POI is triple contested, that's a pretty good spot to disengage to. Same thing about this area here. The fish are really good this season because they work much quicker for some reason now, and you can get shield fish really quickly. Same thing with these areas here, and all of a sudden, you know, you might have to split the POI like 3 ways, something like this. But now there's actually a clear path that you can do if you're forced into this situation, because each team has their own little area they can disengage to. Now you've also got to consider, how do you get to these spots? So for example, if you're in this spot here, you really don't want to peek and give away where you are, because you have no easy cover to get like back to these chests. And also, if you make a lot of noise, someone who's landing up here might come and third party you. So you've really got to be careful about how much you shoot. However, if you're down this side, it doesn't actually matter how much you shoot or whatever, because you've always got this line of sight path that gets you into this area for free, you know? Now, what about actually making the end game based on how your Offspawn goes? So let me refresh, and I want to turn off chests because it gets a bit cluttered. Now, the main 2 solutions there are to a clean mid game is having a good path or just playing Storm. Now, you also do want to have a good path when playing Storm, but still. So let's say you're uncontested, you have a really good path, and zone pool's max, because normally that's going to be the worst one to try and consider. Now, I've got open porta potties, teleports, launch pads to see if there are any like easy solutions to get out of this POI, but there's nothing here. So what can we do? Firstly, we want to try and see what good line of sight paths there are. So immediately I can see there's a pretty decent path going around here and on the other side of the hill, like that. And that gets you into the river, and from there you can just run through, get under this hill, something like that. That's immediately one good path. And even though zone might pull bottom right, there still is a good path to consider, because there's a lot of cover and there's a less chance that people are going to grief you in the mid game. Okay, what else can we see? We can see this path down here. This can get you to here, to fish, whatever. Then from here you can go this side of the POI. Okay, maybe here it's not so simple because, you know, you have to go past the hill. So maybe you run into the POI, something like that. But all of a sudden, as soon as you start like trying to be careful about the path you take, that's when you can avoid people much easier in the mid game. You know, before, when you see a far pull, you might just think, okay, I want a white line, I want to get center, and I want to box up. But obviously, if you go past here, you want to get milked by this hill. This gas station split's going to see you. Someone on this hill is going to see you. But you have to be more creative with your solutions. And if you watch the pros, they all have their own solutions to these games. Now, you do want to have a plan for every kind of zone. So, if zone pulls here, zone pulls here, zone pulls top right. Obviously, I've already made a path for like these kind of pulls. But even if zone pulls like top left or, you know, a good zone, you still want to have an idea on how to avoid people clustering your POI. Because eventually, people are going to come in from these far POIs and try and scrap loot here. So maybe you go up early, maybe you surge base, and maybe you can claim like a whole area. So if I, for example, put a surge base here, and put a surge base here, this covers a lot of area because the sightlines here are really good. So that's covered by this surge base. And then this is covered by this base. I mean, I know there's a hill there, but just for the sake of argument. And now all of a sudden, I can keep this area clear so that on future rotates, I can just run like this and it's a free path based on what you did earlier. So it's always good to have an idea about what you can do to make your paths empty and make sure no one sees you. And also, you really want to make sure that the time you're exposed, like in the lobby like this, is minimized. And that's why it's really important to get your materials, like safety or drop, in the area that you control. Like, as soon as you go over here, you don't control this area. Like, so someone else might come over, beam you, and you would never have known they're there. However, here, you're uncontested. You cleared out your drop spot, and you know you can farm for free. So make sure you take your time in your POI, and then by the time you rotate, you want to just dash across, and then pretty much into a bush or a camping spot, so you minimize the time where you can get beamed. I also want to talk about how you should really be playing Storm. Now, I'm a firm believer in the idea of the deep storm. Now, that's a term I invented, so you've never heard that before. But the idea is that if you're playing Storm here, that's the same practically as playing Storm right over here, because you know you're still taking 1 damage per second, and you still have an opportunity to refarm and whatever. But if I was to ask you which one is safer, this spot or this spot, you're obviously going to say this spot, because why would anyone be this far in Storm? Now, obviously the disadvantage of this is that you're really far away from zone, so by the time you need to go, it's going to be a long trek. But that's why you need to consider shortcuts in the mid game. So for example, this zipline I think could be a good shortcut because it cuts a lot of distance quickly. Same thing about launch pads and teleporters. And then if you combine this with campfires, fishing spots, and just other scrap loots such as just POIs, you can pretty much build a path from where you can play Storm every game. So let's say I wanted to play Storm for this zone. I can wrap around left, fish, and it's going to be really empty. And then by this point, the Storm is probably going to engulf me. And then from here, I can go here, capture my metal if I need to, or just go straight here, get fish, maybe scrap loot if I need to, but probably not. Go here, and then just hit campfire, campfire, POI, and then from here there's the launch pads and whatever. Or I can just keep going north, up to this hill, hit a pad, go deep. Or you can always just wrap around into dead side. So this side, fish, campfire, run, keep running. And it's fine if you're over here, you just need a path to get in deep. And your path might just be to run around the edge, hit campfires, go fish, and keep going. That's not a bad path, because the Storm, there's less chance you get sickness this season, because the Storms are much quicker. And eventually, by the time you get in, you're going to be stacked because you've pretty much avoided the lobby by playing just far away from everyone else. Now, how are you going to bring this all together? Obviously, I've said a lot of things in this video, but you need to find a way to summarize it and suit it to your drop spot. So what I recommend doing is probably having like a Discord, maybe with your duo, and in there you put in all of the key materials and stuff, such as maybe really good things to farm for metal, and various like drop maps and stuff you'll need. But I also recommend having one Fortnite GG map that you're going to have open in the background, and anytime you're in a tournament, you can just quickly refer to it. Maybe you take a quick glance on your second monitor, and you can see where campfires are, where some spare metal is, and obviously it's not going to have all of the info, because it's going to be a bit of a pain to keep switching between tabs in a game. But you do want to have a general idea about what's around, and eventually you're going to learn this stuff naturally. But in the short term, you want to just have a quick point of reference that you can look to in games, and eventually you'll learn it over time.